Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dean Holzwarth, along with my good friend Andy McDonald. We are here to talk about, first, we're going to talk today about the girls' basketball state finals. Andy and I were there last week at the Breslin Center as Rockford and West Catholic competed for state championships. Both fell short. We're going to talk about the semifinals first. Let's talk about Rockford first. NOI pitch, 30 points, really carried that team to the championship game.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a scary moment early in the game, too, when she went down with an ankle injury. She basically scored the first 4 points. She had a couple steals, like, right off the bat, so it was like, oh, gosh, she's going to take over this game and basically get them there on her own is what it felt like at first. And then she comes down to her ankle, and it's like, I mean, you could hear a pin drop at the Breslin. Like, it was just quiet. You know that's the heart and soul of their team. So to lose her to an injury would have been huge. She kind of hobbled off after she, like, untied her shoe a little bit. So I'm like, oh, gosh, she, like, knows this feeling. Because actually a couple years before that, she had a similar injury at the Breslin where she did hurt one of her ankles and then had to miss the rest of that game. So I'm sure to her it was all just going through her head, like, no, not my potential last high school game. Like, not have this happen again. But she was able to come back in pretty quickly and check back in, and she ended up scoring like 15 points in the first half and then went off in the second half. It was a pretty cool moment towards the end of the game, too, when she was shooting her free throws for, like, her 30th point. Like, the student section started chanting 30, and she, like, looked at him and kind of laughed. And she told me, like, after the game that was actually made it a little bit more, like, pressure-filled to get that 30th point, even though the game was in hand at that point. But, yeah, just a outstanding game from her. We kind of looked at when we were there. She didn't have any rebounds, but she doesn't really need them when she's scoring 30 points. So, yeah, she was able to get, I think it was like 4 steals too. So, yeah, she had a pretty good game overall, and Rockford had a really good game. A lot of different scorers hitting 3-pointers like for them like usual when they're operating on all cylinders. Kate Higgins was playing big inside against a couple bigger physical girls. So it was nice to see her to be able to get on the offensive glass and get some second chance points too. So, yeah, great game there, but obviously the state championship game didn't go their way. You were there for that, right?
I was there for that, and Belleville, really, really good team. Sydney Savory is a sophomore, and she's really, really good. That team is young. The other junior, Secret Carter is her name, really good three-point shooter. So Belleville's actually a team to watch, obviously, next year. You know, they have so much young talent. They started their freshman point guard. So, yeah, and, you know, Rockford got down early, and they just couldn't recover. You know, they hit some shots. I think they got to within 5 or 6, but Belleville just kind of pulled away and didn't give Rockford a chance to come back in that game. Anna was Anna. You know, that game, she didn't score as many points as in the semifinals, but, you know, she did all she could. And, you know, a great career for Anna to finish up. 4 straight appearances at the Breslin Center, and you know, just remarkable career for her.
No doubt about that. I think she 100% proved that she was the Miss Basketball winner throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
She played phenomenal. Definitely can't take it away from her, and can't take it away from Rockford. Still a great season. Like I kind of said to Brad, like, this isn't really a surprise to him to see this team play this well because they've been doing this. But Rockford's also a team I think that he believes in, that I think we should all believe next year that could do the same kind of thing.
Yep.
They do have a lot of returning talent, and obviously Addison, Anna's sister, she's only going to get better as time goes on. She's only a freshman this year, and she was already making 3-pointers out there on that stage. So it's very valuable experience going forward when you go into future seasons. So Rockford's definitely going to be a team to pay attention to. Their basketball program's at the top of the MHSAA right now when it comes to girls basketball, and they're going to be someone to pay attention to again next year.
Yeah, they only graduate 3 seniors overall, so lots of young talent. Their freshman JV teams have always been really good. So, yeah, definitely agree with you, Andy. Rockford will be another team to watch here in the next coming years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. West Catholic. Let's talk about West Catholic a little bit. It's funny. Andy sent me a text. So they played Detroit Edison, defending state champs. And they got down early by, 12?
Yeah.
Something like that. It was down early, and he texted me. He's like, I don't know about this one. He's like, you may be able to start writing your story. LOL. Because it just didn't look like West Catholic had a chance in that game. And, you know, credit to the West Catholic girls. Anna Ignatoski, Alicia Dykstra. They're down 12 at the half, and then they fall down by 15 early in the third. And, you know, we're figuring, Detroit Edison's going to compete for another state title.
Yeah.
And here comes West Catholic. Ignatoski starts hitting threes. You know, they just gain momentum, and they end up winning. Yeah. You know, they come back to win. And I did talk to the Detroit Edison coach after the game, and, you know, obviously disappointed And she said, it's the first time she had seen from her girls where they kind of mentally lost focus. Like once West Catholic started catching up and started gaining momentum and cutting that lead down to 6 and 5 and then taking the lead, Edison got kind of really rattled and didn't know what to do. And credit to West Catholic and the job that they did to come back in that game and get that win to go to the finals.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason I sent you that text, they were down by, I think it was like 12 in the first half, and basically every time Edison touched the ball after that, they were already starting to dribble out the clock. Whether they were willing to admit that or not, it was like every possession was going for a minute and a half, and they were trying to just get the layup at the end, and they were finding a way to score, because usually when you have to play defense for that long, it's almost impossible to keep the other team from scoring or fouling them or whatever it is. So the fact that they were able to come out in the second half and do what they did was so impressive, but I also think a lot of that credit just goes to Anna Ignatowski over anything else. This is a girl who tore both of her ACLs.
Great story.
Yeah, previous seasons before that, and she had to miss and watch from the sideline. And I asked her after, like, how worth it is it now that you stayed just to get a moment like that in high school that not everybody gets to have. And she said it was awesome. That's exactly what she never could have envisioned it even going that well. And to be able to do, I mean, you need that, especially at this level, again, going back to not having a shot clock, which I think is something that needs to be looked at. But when you're down by that many points, you need someone to catch fire and go off like that, and she did. I think it was like at one point like 5 3-pointers or close to that in a row. It was just an insane amount. Every time she was touching it, she was hitting it. They were even starting to put hands in her face. Still was knocking it down. Alicia Dykstra still did a great job getting a few points underneath when they needed them. And they just overall did a great job with the bigs inside to be able to rebound in that game and hang around. So
yeah, I think the one big thing is Derek Paez, their first-year coach, he admitted like they came out in a zone, and it's probably maybe a mistake because Edison started making threes, and then he's like, all right, we have to change this, and so they started pressing a little bit, getting up, pressuring a little bit more, and it really caused Edison to turn the ball over. It picked up the pace for West Catholic. Obviously, they gained some confidence, gained some momentum, and they were able to come back and win that game.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a huge win for them either way, just to be able to get that win. I mean, to win by 6 points if you were trailing by as many as 15, like middle of the third quarter, says a lot about that team. They have a lot of good leadership, but Tecumseh, they also
we were watching that game together.
We did. That was the game before.
And we thought Tecumseh was going to lose that game. And they actually
move.
rallied in the fourth quarter, second half, fourth quarter as well to win that game.
Yeah, and they were able to get that to roll into Saturday, and they were able to defeat West Catholic too in a game that was pretty tightly contested. Free throws made the score like a little bit worse than it was, because obviously at that point you're trying to do anything you can just to win. You don't really care about the final score is. So it was another team that got hot at the right time of the tournament. They were able to find a run in them too. So had two teams that were both going in absolutely scorching, had really no idea what was going to happen, and Tecumseh was able to pull it out. They had a Miss Basketball finalist on their team as well. So they're obviously a good team, able to do it. But it did look like Frankenmuth had that game for the most part. So I figured that West Catholic was going to be playing against them, but a lot of good surprises, I think, and they not necessarily surprises in who won, but just when people were down, there was a lot of good comebacks and a lot of good games when it comes to the girls' side of the bracket this year at the Breslin.
Yeah, Tecumseh's bigs really played well, and I think that affected West Catholic a little bit. But we look at West Catholic, you're going to lose Alicia Dykstra, you're going to lose Ignatowski, but you have a freshman in Kenley Slager, and also you have Alexis. Oh, let me get her last name. What's her last name?
That's a good question. It's hard to pronounce, but she did a great job inside the entire game. It's a
Aisel Comey.
Yes,
Aisel Comey. There it is. Aisel Comey, Alexis, only a sophomore.
Yeah, no, I talked to her and after the game, and she said that it was going to be a challenge for her going in. She knew what was going on in that semifinal game, and she was able to get it done and get plenty of rebounds. A lot of second chance points, a lot of tip outs, things like that to keep possessions alive for West Catholic, which is what you need to have when you're trying to mount a comeback like that. So, yeah, it was very, very impressive on her end.
Yeah, as we kind of conclude, both great runs by Rockford and West Catholic, and kind of wrapping up the girls' basketball season, which was another good one. So,
yeah, no doubt.
Yep. Hey, let's talk college basketball now.
Yep.
Michigan State. Let's start with Michigan a little bit. Obviously, Sweet 16.
Yeah.
We're playing Friday night. Michigan State's also down in Atlanta. Michigan, were you surprised by the comeback? They played really well in that second half.
I think that's the thing about Michigan throughout this whole season. Anybody that's watched them, it's a lot of runs and then allowing a lot of runs, and they kind of come back, and it's it always seems like the other team gets back in the game. That's why they've won 13 games. It's not why they've won 13 games within 4 points, but it's why they've been in so many close games at the end this year. To be able to win all 13 of those contests that have been decided by 4 points kind of says a lot about how they're able to execute at the end of games, and it's also just extremely crazy because it's an NCAA record.
Right.
But yeah, when they got down by that many points in the second half, it kind of felt like, is this going to be the Michigan that we saw lose the last 3 or 4 games to end the season, especially against Michigan State when they looked like they didn't even show up at the Breslin Center in that game? I think that they would all tell you the same thing. They needed kind of a mental reset. This team's different right now. They're playing completely different energy. When Trey Donaldson's going for that team, they're able to pretty much beat anybody, it feels like, because of the 2 7-footers they have inside, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. But yeah, it was really Roddy Gale was the hero of that game.
He was. He played great.
Yeah, and I think it was funny. I saw a couple posts this week on like Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, where there was like people that said like Roddy Gale apology forms for Michigan fans, because so many people throughout the season were like, who is this guy? Like, why did they get him in the transfer portal? And I think you saw in the post game video, like their coach and Danny Wolf, they all kind of razzed him up saying he got his mojo back and stuff. And it's awesome to see, because it's like, into the locker room, you know those guys are still sticking with their guy. Like they know that he's there for a reason. He plays a key role in this team.
Yep.
And it was awesome to see him go off. I believe he had 20 points. He was able to get to the bucket when Michigan needed buckets, and that's what you need in this tournament when you're going to win in advance. So Texas A&M had a great team, had a great stretch of runs, and it felt like every time that Michigan was scoring, they were kind of keeping it from like 8 to 10.
Yep.
8 to 10. It just kept going back and forth, and they were able to pull away in the end and able to win that game by double digits. So really, really impressive win for Michigan, and the run they're on right now is awesome.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about guard play in the NCAA tournament, right? And that's one thing I think Michigan lacked a little bit during their struggles, was really good guard play.
Yeah, Trey Donaldson
as you can see, Trey Donaldson, Roddy Gale. So you need that to get to advance deep into the tournament, and that's where Michigan is right now. They will play Auburn, number 1 seed Auburn, coming up on a Friday night, and I think the spread was like 8.5.
Doesn't surprise me.
So it's going to be a challenge for Michigan, but like the way they've been playing through the Big Ten tournament, first couple games here, Dusty May knows how to coach in the NCAA tournament. You know, he got Florida Atlantic to the Final Four 2 years ago, so he's a very good coach, and he understands kind of, I think at this point in the tournament, anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
And we look at all the 16 teams, and I feel like any team can be anybody,
Yeah.
And to me, a big thing is the ability to shoot the ball, be able to defend if you're making 3-pointers and things like that. Anybody can be anybody. So I like Michigan's chances against Auburn. They're playing with some confidence now, and they're going to go into Atlanta, I think, and going to give Auburn a real fight.
No, Dusty knows how to get people to believe, that's for sure. And I think anybody that kind of questioned down the stretch when they lost their last 3 or 4 games, like, that was literally after they just extended him for a longer stay in Ann Arbor on his contract.
Yep.
And a lot of people were kind of like, oh, was this really the right decision? This guy knows how to coach. He knows the X's and O's. It doesn't matter what happens in this Sweet 16 game. Getting to the Sweet 16, winning a Big Ten tournament after you lost your last 3 or 4 games, having, I think it was 22, 23 wins the regular season,
Yep.
After having only 9 the season before and being the worst team in the Big Ten, and even like remotely playing for the Big Ten Conference regular season championship. Obviously, you'll ask any Michigan fan, they wouldn't like the results to be 2 losses to Michigan State because that matters. But besides that little blip, what he did this year was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I don't understand how he's not like up for more Coach of the Year type
100%.
awards with where this team's at. They were absolutely done a year ago. 13 of the 15 players in this roster are transfers. So for Michigan to be able to be on the run they are right now with a team that had to get together at the beginning of the year, like he always kind of says, he didn't really know what they had. He just knew that they could have had something special if it worked out and they all came together. And clearly Michigan's proved to do that, and Dusty's been one of the biggest people in that. Vlad Golden actually came with him from FAU. So he knew what he had in a lot of his players. I think he looks for his kind of guys. And I think if you're a Michigan fan right now, you can't feel like it's going to get any worse once he actually gets his players in here on top of the way he's able to use the transfer portal, because he's been very good at it so far.
Yeah, and I saw a thing the other day that Michigan is the first team in NCAA since the tournament started that made the Sweet 16 after winning only 8-9 games last year. Like the biggest turnaround ever, to get that team there has just been phenomenal.